guy thought I was a cop right away, so he shuffled across the street right up.
When news broke that a new mugshot of Nick Nolte had leaked, fans were bracing for another Hollywood scandal. After all, Nolte's infamous 2002 mugshot, wild hair, dazed eyes, and a floral shirt, became one of the most recognizable images in pop culture history. But this time, the truth behind the photo isn't what anyone expected. Instead of another brush with the law, the new image that's gone viral reveals something far more human and, surprisingly, emotional. At 84, Nick Nolte is no longer the reckless Hollywood rebel who once dominated the tabloids. The man once labeled a troublemaker has quietly transformed into a symbol of endurance and redemption. The supposed new mugshot that surfaced recently isn't from a police station at all. It's actually a still from an upcoming documentary about his life captured during a reflective moment as Nolte revisited the mistakes that almost destroyed him. The confusion came when online outlets, hungry for clicks, used the word mugshot to describe the candid image, setting off a storm of speculation across social media. Fans flooded the internet with questions. Was Nolte arrested again? What happened this time? The truth, however, paints a very different picture. The actor wasn't being booked. He was bearing his soul. Nolte has spent the last few years living quietly in Malibu, far from the chaos of fame, focusing on painting, writing, and spending time with his family. Those who know him say he's at peace now, having long ago conquered his demons. The haunting look in the so-called mugshot wasn't from guilt or intoxication. It was the look of a man who's lived, learned, and finally let go. So no, Nick Nolte isn't in trouble again. What people saw wasn't a fall from grace. It was the face of reflection, resilience, and a reminder that even Hollywood's wildest souls can find redemption. Long before his name became synonymous with one of the most infamous mugshots in Hollywood history, Nick Nolte was the golden boy of the 1970s and 80s, ruggedly handsome, naturally gifted, and utterly unpredictable. His rise to fame was anything but ordinary. He wasn't a polished studio product or a carefully crafted celebrity. Nolte was raw, intense, and magnetic, the kind of actor who didn't just play his roles, he lived them. Born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1941, Nolte grew up far from Hollywood's glamour. He was a restless spirit from the beginning, a boy who never quite fit into the mold. His high school football skills earned him a college scholarship, but his rebellious streak quickly caught up with him. After getting expelled for poor grades and a fake ID scandal, Nolte drifted between odd jobs, searching for something he couldn't name. Acting, when it finally found him, was like striking a match in gasoline. In 1976, Nolte exploded onto the screen in Rich Man, Poor Man, a TV miniseries that made him an overnight star. His portrayal of the rough-edged working-class Rudy Jordache captured America's attention and catapulted him into leading man status. Hollywood couldn't get enough of his intensity. Films like 48 Tires, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, The Prince of Tides, and The Thin Red Line cemented him as one of the greats, a man who could move from action hero to heartbroken poet with equal conviction. But with success came chaos. Nolte's personal life was as volatile as the characters he played. Behind the charm and talent lay a man haunted by self-doubt and addiction. The Hollywood lifestyle, the late nights, the endless pressure, the alcohol, began to take its toll. "I was running from myself," Nolte later admitted in his memoir, Rebel My Life, Outside the Lines. "I didn't know who I was when the cameras weren't rolling. The spiral was slow but inevitable." By the late 90s, Nolte's drinking had become legendary, and his reputation in the industry started to crumble. He withdrew from big studio roles, choosing instead to work on smaller, darker films that mirrored his internal turmoil. Then came 2002, the year that would change everything. police in Malibu arrested Nolte for driving under the influence of GHB, a powerful depressant often associated with date rape cases, but also known to some bodybuilders for its supposed calming effects. When his mugshot was released, the world couldn't look away. There he was, hair uncombed, face flushed, eyes distant, a Hollywood god brought down to earth. The image went viral before viral was even a word. It became a symbol of fallen stardom, splashed across tabloids and late-night monologues. For Nolte, the humiliation was unbearable, but it was also the wake-up call he needed. That picture, he later said, wasn't a man at his worst. It was a man finally facing himself. He checked into rehab shortly after, determined to reclaim not just his career, but his life. In the years that followed, he did just that. Slowly, quietly, Nolte rebuilt. He poured his pain into his performances, delivering haunting turns in films like Warrior and Affliction, roles that earned him critical acclaim and reminded the world of his brilliance. Off-screen, he embraced sobriety and fatherhood, often crediting his 2 children for giving him a reason to keep going. Still, that 2002 image followed him everywhere. No matter what he achieved, it lurked in the background, a permanent reminder of how far he had fallen. But in time, Nolte stopped running from it. "That mugshot doesn't define me," he said in a later interview. "It's just a picture of a man who got lost for a while. The real story is that I found my way back." Now, decades later, when whispers of a new mugshot began circulating online, fans braced for the worst. But what they discovered instead was something very different. Not a man in trouble, but one in reflection. The photo that reignited the headlines wasn't taken in a police station. It was taken on a film set during an intimate documentary session where Nolte confronted his past, including that infamous moment that nearly ended everything. This time, the expression on his face wasn't confusion or intoxication. It was peace. When the headline, "New Nick Nolte Mugshot Just Leaked, It's Not For What You Think," started trending, social media went into overdrive. For many, the phrase Nick Nolte and mugshot instantly conjured memories of that chaotic 2002 photo, the one that had followed him for decades. Fans feared history was repeating itself. But as the details came out, it became clear that the story wasn't about a relapse or a new arrest. It was about a man finally confronting the past that nearly destroyed him. The so-called new mugshot was never taken at a police station. It came from a behind-the-scenes moment during the filming of Rebel Revisited, an upcoming documentary exploring Nolte's turbulent life, career, and redemption. The image, captured by a production photographer, showed an aged Nolte sitting. Under soft studio lights, his expression weary but calm, a man deep in reflection. Somehow, that candid still was leaked online, stripped of context, and quickly misrepresented by a wave of clickbait entertainment blogs desperate for attention. Within hours, misleading posts flooded the internet. Nick Nolte arrested again. Another mugshot shocks Hollywood. On platforms like X, formerly Twitter, the image spread with thousands of comments, many expressing shock, confusion, or disappointment. "Oh no, not again," one user wrote. Others, familiar with Nolte's long journey to sobriety, were quick to defend him. "He's been clean for years," a fan replied. "This is not what it looks like." By the next day, Nolte's representatives issued a statement clarifying the truth. The photo circulating online is not a mugshot. It was taken during a documentary shoot in Malibu. Mr. Nolte remains healthy, sober, and focused on his work. The clarification did little to stop the gossip, but for those who had followed his life closely, it came as a relief. Behind the scenes, Nolte wasn't angry. He was bemused. According to one crew member from the documentary, Nick laughed when he heard about the rumors. He said, "Guess the internet still loves that old mug of mine." He's learned not to take it personally. He knows people remember that image more than most of his movies. The truth was that Nolte had chosen to revisit that painful chapter of his life on camera, deliberately. The documentary, directed by filmmaker Brian Koppelman, aimed to show the full story, not just the mugshot, but the man behind it. For years, Nolte had avoided interviews that touched too deeply on the 2002 arrest, but as he aged, he began to see the value in telling his truth. "You can't run from who you were," he said during filming, "but you can make peace with him." In one particularly emotional scene, Nolte is shown holding a print of his original mugshot. "That's me," he says quietly. "A man drowning, pretending he could still swim. I don't hate that guy anymore. I understand him." That moment, raw and vulnerable, became the soul of the documentary, and the leaked image was taken shortly after it was filmed. Industry insiders who have seen early cuts of Rebel Revisited describe it as one of the most honest celebrity retrospectives ever made. "It's not about fame or scandal," one producer explained. "It's about survival, about what happens after the cameras stop rolling, when you're left alone with your mistakes." Ironically, the viral mugshot frenzy may have ended up helping Nolte more than hurting him. The renewed attention brought curiosity, not condemnation. Younger audiences, many too young to remember his early career, started searching his films and interviews, discovering the depth and brilliance that once made him one of Hollywood's most respected actors. "He's not just the guy from the mugshot," one fan wrote online. "He's the actor who made you feel something every time he was on screen." When asked about the leak, Nolte reportedly shrugged and said, "Let them talk. If it makes people curious enough to hear my real story, that's a good thing." That easy humor, that acceptance, it's the mark of a man who's lived through the storm and come out wiser on the other side. In the end, the new mugshot wasn't a sign of another downfall. It was proof of how far Nick Nolte had come. The face that once symbolized chaos now reflected calm. The eyes that once looked lost now carried a quiet understanding. This wasn't a relapse. It was redemption, captured in a single frame. For most of Hollywood's history, Nick Nolte was the very definition of a beautiful contradiction, a man of unmatched talent whose personal demons often threatened to consume him. But the chaos that defined so much of his younger years eventually gave way to something few expected: peace. After decades of turmoil, addiction, and public scrutiny, Nolte began the long, humbling process of rediscovering who he truly was. Not the Hollywood icon or the tabloid headline, but the man underneath it all. After his 2002 arrest, Nolte made the choice that would change everything. He went into rehab and never looked back. The experience wasn't easy. "I had to strip away everything that wasn't real," he later admitted. "Fame, ego, the need to be somebody, all of it had to go." In treatment, he confronted the pain he had been masking for years. Unresolved grief, regret, and a lifelong battle with self-acceptance. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel everything he had spent decades running from. The transformation was slow, but sincere. Nolte threw himself into therapy, meditation, and fitness, replacing alcohol with quiet reflection and outdoor solitude. He moved away from the bright lights of Los Angeles and settled into a modest home in Malibu, surrounded by nature and peace. Friends say he took to walking the coastline at dawn, barefoot, letting the waves crash at his feet, a daily reminder that life keeps moving forward, no matter how many times you fall. It was in this stillness that Nolte rediscovered his love for art, not the kind captured on screen, but the kind created in silence. He began painting, sculpting, and writing again, often describing it as a form of healing. "You don't act your way out of pain," he once said. "You create your way through it." Those who visited his home described rooms filled with canvases and clay figures, pieces that reflected his journey from rage to redemption. Despite his retreat from fame, Nolte's passion for storytelling never disappeared. When he returned to acting, it wasn't for money or spotlight. It was for meaning. His roles in films like Affliction and Warrior weren't just performances. They were confessions. Each character seemed to carry a piece of his truth, broken men searching for grace, lost fathers learning to forgive themselves. Critics praised the depth of his work, noting that his later performances had a quiet power born from lived experience. "Nick doesn't act anymore," director Gavin O'Connor once said. "He just is. When the camera rolls, he's not pretending, he's remembering." That honesty made Nolte's late career resurgence all the more remarkable. He wasn't chasing fame. He was sharing his soul. Away from the screen, Nolte became a devoted father. His children, Brawley and Sophie, became his greatest pride and purpose. In interviews, he often said that fatherhood was his second chance, the real redemption arc of his life. "They kept me grounded," he said. "They reminded me that there's more to life than the man in the movies." His relationship with them softened him, giving him a new perspective on love, forgiveness, and legacy. By the time the supposed new mugshot hit the internet, Nolte was no longer the troubled star people remembered. He was a reflective artist, a father, and a survivor, one who had made peace with both his past and his public image. The weathered face in the viral photo wasn't a man in crisis, but one who had finally come to terms with himself. Those close to him say he laughs about his reputation now. "People always expect me to be wild," he told a friend. "But these days, the wildest thing I do is forget where I put my glasses." That humor, equal parts self-deprecating and wise, is pure Nolte, and perhaps that's the real story. Behind his so-called chaos, he wasn't a Hollywood monster or a broken man beyond repair. He was simply human. He stumbled, he fell, and he got back up just like everyone else. The difference is, the whole world watched him do it. Now, at 84, Nick Nolte is proof that redemption doesn't mean erasing the past, it means embracing it. "You can't outlive your mistakes," he said, "but you can outgrow them." And in his quiet home overlooking the Pacific, surrounded by art, family, and memories, that's exactly what he's done. When you look at Nick Nolte today, silver hair flowing, eyes clear but still burning with that unmistakable intensity, you don't see a broken man. You see someone who's lived every inch of life, scars and all, and somehow made peace with it. His story isn't one of tragedy. It's one of transformation. And in a Hollywood culture that often devours its own, Nolte's journey stands as a rare and powerful testament to what redemption can really look like. Nolte has never tried to rewrite his past or pretend it didn't happen. Instead, he's chosen to face it, publicly, honestly, and without excuses. "That mugshot?" He once told a reporter with a laugh, "That's me on a bad day. We all have them. The difference is mine got printed on coffee mugs." That sense of humor, that raw acceptance of imperfection, is what makes his redemption story so profoundly human. He doesn't hide the chaos that came before. He honors it, because without it, the peace he's found wouldn't mean nearly as much. Over the years, Nolte has used his platform not to boast about comebacks or success, but to talk about healing. He's been open about the dangers of addiction, the pitfalls of fame, and the importance of mental health, topics once considered taboo among his generation of actors. "It's not weakness to admit you need help," he's said. "It's strength. The strongest thing I ever did was ask for help." Those words have inspired countless fans and fellow actors, many of whom credit Nolte with breaking the silence that still surrounds emotional struggle in Hollywood. His story also redefines what success means. For decades, Nolte chased perfection in his craft, his image, his reputation, and it nearly destroyed him. Now his definition of success is far simpler: being at peace. "I used to think the best thing you could be was famous," he reflected. "Now I think the best thing you can be is honest." That shift in perspective didn't just save his life. It gave his later years a quiet dignity that few stars ever achieve. In recent years, Nolte has largely stepped away from big-budget films, focusing instead on small, meaningful projects and spending time with his children. He's often spotted walking along the Malibu coast, greeting fans with a warm smile and a gentle humility that feels worlds away from the fiery persona of his youth. The man who once battled inner chaos now finds comfort in simplicity. A morning coffee, a good book, or time spent painting in his studio. What surprises many who meet him today is how at peace he seems with aging. In a town obsessed with youth, Nolte embraces the passage of time as part of his story. The wrinkles, the gray hair, they're all reminders that I made it, he said. I survived. For a man who has faced addiction, humiliation, and heartbreak, survival itself is a victory. The so-called new mugshot that caused such a stir online ultimately became a symbol of how misunderstood Nolte still is, and how easily society confuses reflection with decline. The image wasn't a scandal at all. It was part of a documentary exploring aging in Hollywood. Nolte had agreed to participate to confront his past and the way the media shaped his image. "If people can look at me and see that you can come back from anything," he said in the film, "then it's worth it." And that's the lasting legacy of Nick Nolte. Not the movies, not the headlines, but the message. You can fall apart, and you can come back stronger. His life reminds us that no one is defined by their worst day. True redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about owning it, learning from it, and finding grace in the cracks. As he enters the twilight of his life, Nolte seems content. He no longer seeks applause or validation. What he seeks now is authenticity, in art, in love, and in living. "I don't need to be anyone else anymore," he said quietly in a recent interview. "For the first time in my life, I'm okay."